Eons before the appearance of humankind, the Earth was in the throes of its creation. The turbulent planet sought form and stability. Endless rains and rising oceans cooled the molten surface, and as the storms receded, a world emerged. 2.1 billion years would pass before the atmosphere would be capable of transforming a lonely planet into a world burgeoning with life. Now, over 4.5 billion years after the planet's inception, significant portions remain unmaligned by the blunting forces of progress. In the Four Corners region, where the borders of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico converge, lies a spectacular example of terrain evoking a land before time. The Colorado Plateau spreads across each of the Four Corners states, and within its 130,000 square miles, the forces of nature and the evolution of human history come together. For here lie the spectral footsteps of those who crossed the fabled land bridge of the Bering Strait from ancient Asia to North America around 8000 BC, the first Americans. Despite the strangeness of a new land, not to mention the ceaseless demands of their stomachs, the breathtaking beauty of this territory could not have been lost upon them. As we do today, the early adventurers must have taken a moment to gaze with reverence upon some of nature's most brilliant works of art. These desert masterpieces, living objects of immeasurable beauty and amazement. The desert is a unique environment, at once arid and lush, a thriving habitat for innumerable species of plants, animals, and insects. As visitors leave civilization further and further behind, the sense of traveling back in time can be overwhelming. The centuries peel away as the naked earth unfolds. The desert's most haunting quality is its engulfing prehistoric silence, a lasting echo of an age before humanity. Other areas are awash in sound, such as the famed Red Rock Crossing in Sedona, Arizona, about 25 miles south of Flagstaff.
There was a potter from New Mexico here the other day, and he said, "This is the most perfect sound in the world. It's like a symphony when you listen to the water flowing, especially a little ways downstream where those rocks are. It's the feel of the place. There's a peace here that we don't find very many places left in the world."
Mm-hmm. Red Rock Crossing and nearby Cathedral Rock are among the most photographed natural wonders in the region, if not the world. They are also locations of great spiritual reckoning. The stunning combination of sight and sound can tap the depths of human emotion.
People come from all over the world just to see it, and they come here and stand a lot of times with tears in their eyes. A man from Germany was here the other day, and he said, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "My friend came over here from Germany, and when he came home, he said, if you don't see anything else in America, go to Red Rock Crossing." He said, "My friend was right."
Over the millennia, large areas of the Southwest have been covered by shallow seas, despite their 4,500-foot elevation today. Sandy deposits left in the wake of these recurring oceans, compressed over time, are responsible for creating the dominating sandstone strata. Iron oxide deposits give the rock its multitude of legendary red hues, so vivid and varied, some call the region color country. Unique obelisks and canyon walls, rising as high as 2,000 feet, show what great periods of time, coursing bodies of water, and the same jutting forces that created the Rocky Mountains can do.
It's hard to believe that just the river that we're walking through is what created the canyon itself.
Departing from what must surely be the world's tiniest airport, one gains a bird's-eye view of the rippling landscape of Utah's Lake Powell, just north of the Arizona border. Construction of the Glen Canyon Dam began in 1956, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower detonated the first powder charge by pressing a button at the White House over 1,700 miles away. Taking 10 years to complete, the dam transformed this once yawning arena of barren canyons and stone corridors into one of the largest man-made lakes on Earth. The lake is fed by 5 rivers originating in 4 states, including the Colorado River, the ruling waterway of the American Southwest. As part of a vast river system that includes the Green River, it dominates the Colorado Plateau, travels through 7 states, and affects the geological makeup of 245,000 square miles. Winding its way between mountains considerably younger, its flow extends 1,450 miles from the Rocky Mountains of northern Colorado to the Gulf of California and the Baja Peninsula. The Glen Canyon and Hoover Dams have greatly diminished the power of these once commanding and treacherous rivers, but they continue to shape and carve the rock as they have for millions of years. Moreover, the Colorado's once rushing waters have been replaced by another, if controversial, wonder, Lake Powell. Spilling over the border of Utah into Arizona, Lake Powell's 266 square miles of water are known to reach depths of 500 feet and are ripe with bass, catfish, trout, and carp. The shoreline alone stretches 1,960 miles, surpassing the entire western coastline of the United States. Named after John Wesley Powell, the pioneer explorer who loved the land and gave Lake Powell's Glen Canyon its name, it is ironic that this grand lake should be named after him.
As far as the dam sites are concerned, Glen Canyon Dam up here was the last major dam built on this Colorado River system. It covered up what is called the Glen Canyon, and according to Major Powell, who of course was our first pioneer in the canyon, Glen Canyon, which is now covered up by the backwaters of Lake Powell, was probably the most beautiful part of this whole scenic river trip down through here. And although Lake Powell is beautiful and it's brought a lot of scenery and recreation and jobs to everybody, it's still kind of a shame to me to have something like this covered up.
The controversy regarding Lake Powell has led some to suggest that it be drained and the canyon restored to its original state. Others argue in favor of the lake's splendor, be it natural or man-made. No one disputes the fact, however, that the influx of water into Glen Canyon and the subsequent creation of Lake Powell have allowed greater access to sites seldom before seen. The ability to use boats in the canyon has brought truly spectacular sights within reach of anyone who wants to see them. One such sight is the astonishing Rainbow Bridge. Created by the same rushing flows of wild water and the tenacious effects of erosion, land bridges such as this are wonders of geologic architecture. A site considered sacred by the Navajo Indians, it measures 290 feet high and 278 feet wide, making it the largest known natural bridge in existence. Secluded deep within Glen Canyon's labyrinth of trails and streams, Rainbow Bridge was officially discovered in 1909, seen only by the hardy few who could hike the distance. Western novelist Zane Grey proved his mettle in just this regard, leaving his signature at the base of the bridge for the curious to seek out as a reward of their own. The lake attracts about 2.5 million visitors a year, yet this massive body of water and its winding tributaries remain as isolated as ever. The poetry of a slow drift around towering canyon walls has all the mystery and anticipation of a beautiful dream. The vast well of silence richly complements the breathtaking displays of ageless rock. Houseboats are a popular conveyance for explorers who want to sample a taste of the pioneer life with the comfort and security of modern convenience at arm's length. Where dinosaurs once nibbled plants and each other, and where Native Americans hunted woolly mammoths, Lake Powell today is an idyllic location to simply enjoy the outdoors.
Little late.
250 miles away, the Utah Canyonlands is an expanse like none other on Earth. The Colorado and Green Rivers converge amidst rock strata that record time like rings in the trunk of a tree. This was one of many locations where the Anasazi Indians built their amazing cliff dwellings over 1,000 years ago. Composed largely of sandstone, with sedimentary limestone, shale, and upcroppings of granite, the area is a treasure trove of dinosaur fossils. Still in a constant but imperceptible state of erosion, the stately canyonlands are possessed by a ghostly serenity. Fossilized sand dunes stand frozen amidst ancient ocean beds, and it was over this tortured terrain that homesteaders dragged family and possessions toward dreams of new lives in the West in the 18th and 19th centuries. Far from romantic, the journey was always harsh, with tales of men having to cut through solid walls of rock in order to continue. Tragedies, large and small, are often marked in history by the names of the locales in which they occurred. Dead Horse Point is one of many with a story behind its name.
Dead Horse Point was used at one time for a corral to corral wild horses, and cowboys pushed the horses out onto this point and put a fence up behind them. They had snow on the ground at the time, and they were coming back in a few days to pick up these horses. But when they got here, the snow had melted, and some of the horses had choked to death.
Died of thirst. Huh?
Died of thirst, yeah.
Still, the beauty of the land looms larger than life, its landmarks surviving generation to generation, century to century.
There's something orderly and classical out there. The orderly succession of cliffs, rock upon cliff. As you look all around and you look at one rock layer, you can follow it with your eye for 50 miles.
As intriguing as the land bridges are the giant stone windows that frame many of Utah's stunning vistas. Whereas natural bridges are carved out by flowing water, windows and arches are formed when water freezes and expands in the cracks, causing pieces to fall out. Wind and rain also assist in sculpting the arches. Described as rainbows of the gods, these too are considered sacred by the Navajo. The best-known arch in Utah's canyonlands is the impossibly tenuous, delicate arch. In photographs, it appears as fragile as its name implies, but when standing beneath it, this 65-foot-high structure seems immovable. Within the 73,000 acres of Arches National Park, there are at least 1,500 arches, but Delicate Arch lays claim as the most fascinating. Sitting on a slightly sloping angle, it appears ready to slide off its foundation at any moment. And the process of erosion that created it will indeed cause it to do exactly that someday.
Those other people.
He look at them too anyway.
Another amazing example of natural architecture is the disorienting maze called the fiery furnace. Unlike the fiery furnace of the Bible that awaits the wicked, this challenging labyrinth is a winding funhouse, inscrutably forged by the same elements that gave shape to everything else in the canyonlands. The 2-hour hike through its narrow spaces and gaping hollows is like a descent into an ancient tomb that has already been ransacked. The treasure may be gone, but the spirits linger. Only professionals and seasoned explorers dare risk traveling such hazardous terrain alone.
We don't advise that you come through here unless you have a lot of experience four-wheeling before you try this.
This is the proverbial road less traveled, a road with no true end, where one can find meaning beyond things material.
This is my house. I spend more time here than I do at my home. I love it here, and there's a special feeling about it. A good example is I had a girlfriend once that couldn't realize why I didn't go to church. I told her that I was in church every day, and that I was closer to God out in this country than I ever felt in a church house. And so I spend my time here, and I've chosen to do that.
Contrary to common belief, deserts are not strictly dry, arid places. While thousands of lonely miles can spread in all directions with little significant growth breaking the landscape, some areas offer a suggestion of what the area was like when the Southwest was a lush, swampy garden. is the desert's dichotomy more evident than Zion and Bryce canyons. Remnants of the ancient swamplands contrast with stark rock formations, and chasms and forests give way to the closest thing to an alien landscape to be found on Earth. Zion National Park's 229 square miles spread is populated by hundreds of species of mammals, fish, and birds, including the golden eagle. Private ranchers still raise cattle in the area, preserving a fragment of what was once a thriving Old West. Like much of the Southwest, Zion's 147,000 acres are a composite of sandstone, limestone, and shale, dating back more than 250 million years to the Triassic and Jurassic periods. A particularly curious rock is Weeping Rock, which seems to mourn something it can never express. Rainwater trickles through the porous sandstone cliffs until it reaches the clay below and seeps out along the spring line. Though easily explained, the incongruous image of water pouring from stone remains an alluring phenomenon. The whole of Zion National Park is a titanic vista of a planet at its most dynamic. But the truly amazing sights await those who venture 85 miles northeast into the exotic canyons named after Ebenezer Bryce, a Mormon cattle rancher who was among the first modern-day settlers in the region in 1875. When Bryce remarked that this would be a hell of a place to lose a cow, he wasn't exaggerating. Bryce Canyon is actually a series of canyons, and it's here the art of endless erosion has created structures beyond description. Looking more than vaguely like human figures, these formations came to be called hoodoos, an African word for spirits or ghosts the mountain men most likely picked up from slaves and their descendants. Like snowflakes, no two are alike. Composed of Clarin limestones, sandstones, and mudstones, hoodoos look eerily like fossilized castles and primitive temples. Thousands of spires and fins and pinnacles rise like ancient cities above the winding mazes and terraces below, reaching heights between 50 and 100 feet. A few of the older ones are even as high as 200 feet.
Well, this is the youngest layer of the Colorado Plateau, laid down about 55 million years ago. And since that time and through some geologic events that have happened, some rapid erosion has been taking place here and just eating away at the plateau where this is located and exposing these fantastic forms behind as a result of the erosion. It's going to continue to do this for many, many years as the gullies work their way into the plateau, creating these formations. The old ones will be eroded away, and this display will just gradually move its way westward.
How fast is rapid in geologic terms?
We don't see a lot of difference in one human lifetime. We're talking 1 foot of erosion against the plateau every 65 years. So in geologic terms, it is very rapid, but you know, you come here when you're 10 years old and you come back when you're 70, you really won't see much change.
Hiking through the fiery furnace might be a pleasurable challenge, but venturing into the winding mazes and rocky terraces below the hoodoos is an experience worthy of an epic adventure. Temperatures reach 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, but fall below freezing throughout the year, contributing to the erosion of the formations. Despite the temperate climate, however, delving into the canyon's lower depths is anything but a cakewalk. The potential for peril in this remote area is always at hand, but experiencing the surreal beauty of these time-carved canyons makes it a worthwhile risk for the sure-footed explorer. The splendor of Zion and the unsettling formations of Bryce will remain undisputed for centuries to come. But there is another canyon that will always receive top billing, the Grand Canyon. Located in north-central Arizona, about 80 miles northwest of Flagstaff, the Grand Canyon is a mile deep, 277 miles long, and 10 miles wide at its greatest expanse, ranging in age from 4 million to 2 billion years. The many layers of sedimentary rock tell the complex tale of the canyon's formation. With elevations of 6,950 feet at the south rim and 8,400 feet at the north, millions of years of erosion and uplifts have revealed countless clues about the origin of the Earth. Hidden well within an isolated corner of the Grand Canyon is a veritable piece of paradise, Havasu Falls. While the canyon is a mile deep, access to the falls and the adjacent Havasupai Indian Reservation is only possible on foot or horseback by an 8-mile trail. The only alternative is by helicopter. Living on the floor of the Grand Canyon are the Havasupai, descendants of a farming tribe called the Humans, who once lived along the lower Colorado River. Though spread across 188,000 acres, their reservation is neatly nestled in a remote canyon pocket, and the Havasupai like it that way. For them, this is their land, and this is where their culture and heritage dictate they live. They lead a simple but modern life, depending upon employment within the reservation to maintain their heritage. They also operate a lodge and campground near Havasu Falls, limiting the number of visitors to prevent overcrowding. Many who visit the park come and go without ever being aware that the Havasupai reside here. In the meantime, like the Pueblo Indians, they keep the Native American spirit alive and fresh, with minimum interference from the outside world. The Havasupai are content to be a well-kept secret of the canyon, and the canyon itself remains the monolithic gem of the Southwest. It is no wonder, then, that artists are inspired to capture this beauty on canvas, and filmmakers have used it as a backdrop for more than 70 years. The challenge of traveling these lands, as much as their stunning beauty, is certainly a factor in their irresistible allure. Even today, with cars and planes and man-made lakes granting greater access, the land of the Red Rocks remains untamable. Far more affecting and personally touching than any of the Red Rocks or Crimson Canyons is the history of the ancient people who lived among them. It is their story that profoundly rivals that of the ageless rock, and it is their spiritual resonance that lingers here to this day. Between the passing of the dinosaurs and the arrival of those who would come to be known as the first Americans, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico sat silent for centuries. The arrival of men and women began no less than 20,000 years ago. Primarily hunters who followed their food source instead of establishing settlements. Between 1 to 450 AD, hunting became secondary to farming, and by settling down, they were afforded time to hone other skills, particularly basket weaving. Before advancing architecturally, they sought shelter in caves, digging small pits in the ground for food storage as well as burials. Such living conditions certainly left them vulnerable to wildlife and the elements. And by 750 AD, they had graduated to larger pueblos built along mesa tops. Though scattered throughout the Four Corners region, the greatest concentration of these villages were located in an area we today know as Mesa Verde, Colorado. It was here that over 1,000 years ago they domesticated turkeys and dogs, harvested their crops, and excelled in the making of pottery, which vastly improved their ability to cook food. Finally, a millennium before machines, before noise, before convenience, the Anasazi, barely more than 5 feet tall, built virtual apartment complexes with only their bare hands and the crudest of tools. With stone laid in adobe mortar, the Anasazi erected these amazing settlements throughout the area. While the Anasazi surely saw the defensive advantage of settling in such impossible terrain, it also guaranteed that they would live an exceedingly harsh life, seldom surviving longer than 35 to 40 years. As astonishing as their ruins may be, living in them might not have been any better than what today's homeless are forced to endure. The stone walls did little to provide relief from the sweltering summers and bone-chilling winters. The mainstays of the Anasazi diet were corn, squash, and beans. Yet, despite being skilled farmers with knowledge of sophisticated irrigation systems, they suffered from malnutrition, and years of eating grains and other coarse foods wore their teeth down to useless shards. It is likely, however, that the Anasazi had long settled into and accepted this way of life, and that laughter filled the air as much as groans of discontent. Aside from farming and hunting, their culture was a rich combination of craft and ritual. A dominant feature common to all of their villages was the kivas, which served as centers of ritual and worship. Once covered with roofs supported by large beams, the kivas were equipped with ventilation systems that channeled out the smoke of their ceremonial fires. This was a luxury unique to the kivas, while smoke in the living quarters, particularly during the winter months, was simply a nuisance to be endured. At its peak, at least 400 people lived in Cliff Palace 7 centuries ago. They married, bore children, and traded with neighboring villages. They made pottery, maintained their dwellings, and paid respectful homage to their gods. A neighboring race of desert farmers was the Sinagua. This impressive 5-story, 20-room dwelling suggests that they followed the Anasazi's lead in choosing where and how to build. Some suggest that the Sinagua may even have been a combination of Anasazi and Hohokam tribes. Called Montezuma Castle by turn-of-the-century settlers and soldiers who mistook it for an Aztec ruin, it was one of hundreds that once hugged the cliffsides.
The structure has 5 stories tall, there's 20 rooms, and it's an apartment-type house, and so it was lived in by several family groups. Each room was average in size about 10 by 10, and that would probably be a total house for a family. In the back of the room, there'd be maybe little walled-up areas which they'd use for storage, but they used their house very much for storage, as much as they did for living in it.
During this amazing period in history, these cliff-dwelling tribes built and lived in these astonishing structures throughout the Southwest, sharing commerce and ritual with their neighbors. Views like these greeted them each morning, but that was soon to change. The mystery of how the Anasazi and the Sinagua came to build and live here is dwarfed by the greater mystery surrounding their sudden departure around 1300 AD. There's evidence that they left so quickly that roasting corn was left to burn on the spit. It is not known whether they left under threat of attack or as a result of worsening crop conditions due to drought. It may have been a combination of both, but whatever the cause, the Anasazi literally vanished. It is believed, however, that the Pueblo Indians of today are the Anasazi's most direct descendants, and it is within them that the Anasazi spirit lives on. The only written documentation of them and the other tribes that populated the area remains in the form of petroglyphs and pictographs. Petroglyphs and pictographs are found throughout the Four Corner States, including Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. Strictly defined, petroglyphs are drawings that have been scratched, pecked, or rubbed into the surface of the stone. Pictographs were painted using a mixture of ash, clay, and animal fat applied with a finger or stick.
These petroglyphs here is a form of art. It's very, very ancient. It's even more ancient than some of your most valuable arts, you know, and it's one of a kind. Each one of these are not the same. They're a little bit different in some way. Different persons have done it.
Located within the city limits of Albuquerque, Petroglyph National Park is said to have 15,000 petrographs, perhaps more. The rocks speak to those who know how to listen.
Some of them are symbols of dancers that are still existing, dances and stuff. And some, it could mean almost anything that the artist, I guess, was trying to depict, but these are, I think, are like star beams, you know, when we talk about the stars, and Indians have that kind of legend.
Even those for whom the spirit is not so strong or identifiable, the weight of history here bridges the chasm between the ages.
The more you're here and you see the petroglyphs and you start to look at some of the context that they're in, you really start to feel something special about the place. There's a power here that you don't necessarily understand, but you definitely do feel it.
Well, it's being in touch with the ancient past, really, you know, and realizing that we're a very new generation here. We're the current owners, or passers through, I should say. And at one time, many, many years ago, like before 1000 AD, these people were passing through here and leaving their marks. So it makes me wonder what they're going to see around here, another 1,200, 2,000 years from now that we leave behind as our legacy.
Rock art found at Zion was most likely left by the Fremont Indians. Dominating the region just north of the Anasazi, the Fremont remain by far a more enigmatic tribe who lived both as nomadic hunters and settled farmers. Their drawings are veritable photographs of ghosts, telling us little about who they were or how they lived.
Soldiers there.
Nearby Newspaper Rock is one of the finest displays of prehistoric Indian rock art to be seen in the United States. Numerous Indian cultures contributed to this stunning assemblage of images, including the Fremont, Anasazi, and Navajo. Some drawings are easier to decipher than others, but the most fascinating are often the most elusive. The Indians who created them were certainly deft artists for their time, with a talent for storytelling through symbolic imagery. Still more drawings are to be found in Sedona, Arizona, founded in 1902 by farming settler Carl Schneble. Carl Schneble named the town after his wife, Sedona, after an earlier name was deemed too long to fit on a postmark. The town and surrounding areas are most often described as God's country. Not only is the beauty of the land seen as synonymous with visions of heaven, but also there are many who feel a genuine sense of spirituality here. German surrealist painter Max Ernst moved to this area in the 1940s, telling his friends that there were only two places in the world he wanted to live, Paris and Sedona. Those in search of petroglyphs and pictographs must trek into the desert where the ancient artists lived and died. The trek follows the same footpaths the Indians used. Explorers are drawn here for the same reason they always have: the opportunity to experience the spiritual resonance of human history in the flesh.
I think it's just so interesting to look at this, the writing, the drawings on the walls. Number one, to think that they've been here for so long and that there were people here thousands of years ago, and to try to figure out what was it they were trying to tell us, what were they using this for at the time. It's just quite amazing.
Caves such as these offer a view through a particularly wide window of time.
This was probably originally occupied as much as 10 to 12,000 years ago, as was by the archaic Indian. After that, probably beginning in around 500 to 700 AD, we had an Indian here that archaeologists have designated the Sanawa, meaning without water. And this was the southern Sanawa that lived here. After the Sanawa left or disappeared, we have Yavapai and Apache Indians, Tonto Apache Indians, that occupied this area. And after they were all put on reservations, then we had the white man who lived in the area. So, whole span of civilization.
Determining which tribe drew which drawing and when, however, requires insightful detective work.
For the most part, pictographs are very difficult to date, all right? It's almost impossible in many cases to tell when they were actually drawn by the Indians. But one easy way that you at least can get one date is to notice that these figures here are all drawn on horses. Well, we know for a fact that horses weren't introduced to the Indians until at least 1540. And so that pretty well tells us that these ones here were Yavapai Apache, and that they were probably done sometime at least into the 1600s.
Okay.
Another remnant of these ancient tribes is the medicine wheel, a living tradition of tribal practitioners and holy men.
This is a traditional medicine wheel site.
and they estimate that this site has been here for about 350 to 380 years. These are obviously not the original rocks. The original rocks are 3 to 4 foot down underneath these. But this site is still used on a regular basis, as you can probably tell, both by native peoples and non-natives who come down to do their own spiritual practice or meditations and tie into the traditional ways of this area.
As the ancient traditions live on in the rocks and ruins of the desert, the Sedona of today is equally famous for being a mecca for believers in New Age and holistic philosophies. Similar to the medicine wheels are the vortexes, which are likewise claimed to renew the spirit and heal the body. 3 are located at Bell Rock, Cathedral Rock, and Boynton Canyon. And a 4th is conveniently located near the airport. Many come seeking to experience the energizing effects of the vortexes, which vary from person to person.
Everybody is an individual and reacts differently to these different places. For me personally, Boynton Canyon, where we are at now, and Bell Rock are 2 very powerful places for me. The airport vortex, only on rare occasions do I experience or feel anything. Cathedral Rock, which is the other major vortex in this area, does absolutely nothing for me. I've never experienced or felt or gone through any changes. It's beautiful, it's great hiking and camping, but on an energy level, it does nothing for me. And yet I have friends who swear that Cathedral Rock's a power dynamo, and for them it is, but for me it's not. Everybody reacts differently to these different areas. So to put everybody into a group and say when they go out to this area, this is what they're going to experience, just can't be done, because each individual has their own experiences that they go through and that they need to deal with.
But the magic and mystery of the American Southwest cannot be limited to a few gatherings of stones or swirling points of energy. This red land with wide arms waits to embrace those who are ready to receive its timeless gifts. The planet Earth is a living, breathing marvel, and its prehistoric past lives on in every rock, every cliffside, and every canyon. As the modern world encroaches upon these ancient, sacred landmarks, it falls upon the living to preserve the sanctity of the dead. There are those, however, who fail to treat the earth and the traditions of those who came before with respect.
You can see the bullet hole in this one too, because it looks like it's just splattered in there rather than packed in there, you know.
Occasionally, perhaps ironically, nature has ways of evening the score.
And every once in a while you hear a story that you consider, well, this is just deserts, and somebody was out there vandalizing a saguaro, shooting it with a rifle. And unfortunately for the shooter, the cactus fell on him and he was killed. You know, it's a tragedy, but it also is a kind of divine retribution sort of thing.
And so it goes, in this breathtaking country where every passing moment joins the ancient past in eternal repose. This fantastic landscape, where the passing of each day brings the discovery of another wonder, and the pursuit of red rocks follows a glorious trail that leads to the dawn of humanity on this continent.